Hi, everybody. This is Lowell, and we're talking about sound system basics. And the first video that I wanted to share with you, the previous one was an introduction, and I talked about what I wanted to say today, setting it up about acoustics. And most people think that um, you can buy all this equipment, spend all this money, and things are going to sound amazing just because of the equipment. But that's really not true. It's um, very dependent, possibly even most dependent on the room that you're in, the type of acoustic space that you're in. You have to take that into account. The sound system alone will not make things sound good. So I wanted to talk a little bit about different schools of thought in terms of acoustics and kind of the history of sound in terms of stage sound and production sound. Back in the 2,000 years ago, they had amphitheaters, and you've seen the ruins in Rome and in Athens where people would gather. These colosseums and places of gathering that they were essentially conical in shape, and that would help people. That would help the sound essentially carry from the stage up into where people were seated, and kind of like a horn. A trumpet is conical and gets bigger, and that's kind of how these colosseums were shaped. And so people had to project, and they had to use the acoustic space. Um, so that was years ago. And then as we moved into the 20th century, with electricity being coming to the fore, we started having your larger ensembles becoming smaller because they didn't need quite as much amplification, or they didn't need the larger ensembles. What I'm trying to say, the larger ensembles would project a larger tone, a larger sound, and so when you have electricity coming in, where you have some bass amps and some microphones for singers. They were merging basically a hybrid of acoustic with technology. For example, a big band was still quite a sizable group. Big jazz band in the 50s, but you still had a bass amp, and the drums didn't really need to be mic'd too much. And then you had your vocals that had a microphone, so they could project over over all the sound that was being produced. And then we move into the rock era, which is more and more electronic. Almost all of it was generated with electricity and tube amps on the stage, and so a lot of the sound was coming from the stage. And then we start moving into the latter part of the 20th century, to where sound engineers wanted greater and greater control. And so you have people basically minimizing the effect of amps. You could still have amps on stage for the musicians, but it was predominantly trying to curtail how that bled over from the stage, and mainly everything going through the sound system. And then you get to latter part of the 20th century into the 21st century, where you are dealing with EDM music, electronic dance music, where it's entirely computer generated and automated. Automated light shows together with DJ styled improvisation. Daft Punk would be a familiar name in that era. And so what happened basically is we went from entirely acoustic music with lots of people involved, because a lot of people needed to create all that sound, to going to essentially totally electronically produced music. And so, and parenthetically, and this doesn't really have anything to do with what I'm talking about, but one of the ideologies or core tenets of belief with our music school, Dulce School of Music, is that music is not just sound. Music is relationships. And so, however relationships are formed, I'll leave that up to the individual artist. But music produced by a computer essentially cannot be a full expression of music. It has to involve relationships, whether people are listening to it. But I maintain that when people come together to make sound together and learn how to play music together, that is the essence of music. That is where the real creativity lies, is in the interaction of the creativity of people. So anyway, back to what I'm talking about. So there are basically two schools of thought in terms of acoustics with sound. And so the first is historic. And so you'll walk into a theater and or a concert hall, and they've found a way to make concert halls really sound well. There's one that I'm thinking about in Dallas, the Bass Hall, and I know some of the people that worked on that. And up at the top of the room, there's an echo chamber that can be opened up or closed off based upon whether they want to make the room more wet or more dry, in order for the type of music that they're going to be doing. If it was theater, more of an opera where you need to be able to hear intelligibly the words that are being sung or spoken, then it needs to be drier. When I say drier, less reverb. But predominantly, you want the room in an acoustic environment. You want the room to be to have reflectivity, and so that happens through a lot of different means. But predominantly, the sidewalls are having multiple reflections. If you've ever gone out to a mountain and clapped your hand or yelled, and you hear the echo come back, that was the sound that you made bouncing back to you. And so inside of a concert hall, you'll have multiple instances of echoes, which all combined causes it to sound wet, like your bathroom. When you're singing in the shower, it's resonant, and it's very reverberant. So that's really, really good and optimal for acoustic music. But it's not so good. Actually, it's really bad. It's detrimental to electronically produced music or sound system produced music. What people that want in a sound system design is they want the room not to be that, but rather to be more like a closet, to where it's very dry. And so when the room is very dry, that causes the sound system to have greater control, and where you can actually add the reverbs and the various effects inside of the sound system, and where you have total control of that. You can make a case for both directions. Some people try to do a hybrid version of that. There's an auditorium here in Midland, Odessa, called the Wagner-Noel Performing Arts Center, and they have a room made for acoustic music, but they also have some line arrays that help touring groups come in and use the system. It's sort of a hybrid system. It leans more towards the classical music use, and sounds beautiful with classical music. It's a little bit not quite as successful, in my opinion, with the electronic line array systems in that room. But anyway, my point is that there's two schools of thought, and so when you're thinking about setting up a sound system, you really have to think strategically about the acoustics and how the speakers interrelate with the acoustic environment. And that's my first foundation of talking about sound system.